I'm Abhinav Sharma, your guide through today's exploration of India's education investment landscape. This is yet another edition of the Bharat Shiksha Sankalp webinar series. So, as we convene under the banner of the Bharat Shiksha Sankalp, we stand at a pivotal juncture in the Indian education. This initiative, as you all know by now, is not merely an event or a webinar, but it's the crystallization of our collective commitment to transforming the tapestry of Indian education through strategic investment and policy reform. The topic that we will be discussing today is a very complex topic, and it's a very broad topic as well. So we will be discussing about exploring investment horizons in Indian education, navigating FDI policies, regulatory frameworks, and tax implications. And for this pivotal topic, we have our visionary panelists whose experiences have reshaped the education landscape, starting with Mr. Devdatta Chaudhary. He is the Associate Dean of Accreditations and Assurance of Learning AOL at Voxen University, Hyderabad, which is a premier institution of higher education in India. He has over 20 years of combined experience in academia and industry and holds a PGDM from IIM Calcutta and a current PhD, which is in progress from Voxen University itself. He is passionate about enhancing the quality and relevance of management education and developing future leaders who can create value for the society and the environment. Followed is Mr. Rajiv Charitupasakri. As an influential leader at Niti Aayog and a life coach, Mr. Tupasakri brings a unique blend of policy insights and personal development to the table. His contributions have been instrumental in promoting a sustainable mindset that transcends the classroom and enters the realm of lifelong learning. So I'm honored to have both panelists here for this important topic. And now this webinar is being live streamed to the global audience as well. So we have our global audience joining in and listening to your expert insights. So Mr. Devdutt, I'll be starting with you with the first introductory question, and you can start with your own introduction, a deeper introduction. But my first question around this topic to you will be that as you are seeing the India's evolving FDI policies, so how do you think that these policies will potentially shape a new era for education excellence and inclusion in India?
Okay, let me start with the first major policy that happened in 2010 when we opened up our education sector to FDI, 100% automatic route, and anybody could start a education business in India. However, the problem was mostly school education, higher education was driven by trusts and societies, and therefore, by rule, by law, they cannot take investments. So it was a very complex route of investments, and that's why it didn't take off. And then slowly, what has happened today, if you go down today, that government has completely opened up this sector. Government in 2023 has passed a new law in which a foreign company can come in and set up their own campus, and they can set up their own campus through whatever route they choose. They have to upfront declare the route. If you look at Deakin University, which started at the Gift City, their model is very interesting. Their model is they are primarily operating through a third party. Their infrastructure is a third party. Their operational partner is a third party, and they are calling this it as HQS service, HQS service. So it's a very interesting where they will give all the intellectual content. They will send their teachers. They will appoint teachers, but they are not running the campus. So these things, if you look at 2010 and if you look at today, lot of these innovation has happened. New foreign universities are coming in, and as a result, lot of buoyancy is coming to this sector. I have not even touched the edutech sector, which has greatly benefited to FDI. I will leave it for subsequent.
I think definitely, and you quoted the example of Deakin University, and I've been following that development as well. And gift city. I believe we know about the Dubai Knowledge Park, Dubai Academic City, and dedicated education cities in countries like Qatar and UAE. So I think India is also moving in that direction, and that is why it is very important and imperative for the, I would say, the Indian education diaspora to know that how we can bring in the foreign university campuses. And we, being and I being highly involved with the foreign educators and institutions, we always receive a lot of queries from our institutional partners that how India's education reforms are shaping up to set up a foreign campus in India. So I think future looks very exciting. So Rajiv ji, coming to you to have your insights and expertise. So according to you, do you see that FDI in education of 100% FDI is a welcome change? And along with that, what lessons do you think we can have from the successful global educational investments that can be tailored to the Indian context?
I mean, 100% I agree that, bringing FDI, into sector like education is really going to benefit India as a country and all Indian citizenships. However, as we all know that everything which comes, should also have certain boundaries. So a well-defined structure will always be, good from a future perspective. I'd like to quote an example of my previous organization where I was working for. It's People Combine was the name of the company, and Oak Ridge International School, pretty famous, we had over here in Hyderabad, as well as other parts of the country. And eventually the founders, it was acquired by Nord Anglia Education, which is a UK-based organization, right? And they have more than 70, 75 plus schools across the globe, So this is what can happen, once the doors are open, a completely different organization can come in, from a different country and then get direct entry. So it's a heads up for them, already well-established running schools, they get to run from day one. So that's the big advantage that they get. And from an Indian perspective, what we are getting is we are instantly getting access to all the global best practices, which are running across the, various countries, best teaching methods, which are the various tools, educational content tools, digital tools, marketing tools. We get access to all of that. So it's a win-win according to me. And I think it is very beneficial. There are certain pitfalls also to it. For example, if you look at it from a context, from a global perspective, there is still a lot of disparity, between the valuation of currencies. Right. So if you're comparing INR with INR, that is similar companies over here versus INR with dollar, or, with UK, then there is a difference over there. So now imagine a situation where, you are head of a global organization and you are dealing with dollars across the globe, right, as a common currency. When you equate that to the revenue that you generate from US or UK versus revenue that you generate from India, there is a significant difference. Correct? In terms of dollar value conversion when you get.
Absolutely.
And now what happens is typically an entrepreneur's mindset, works that he or she will put more efforts where there is more opportunity for revenue generation and more, bottom line generation. So in that context, India just becomes a presence market rather than an earning opportunity, from a pure K-12 education perspective. However, if we expand it, as Devdatta talked about, we'll discuss more later. If we expand this from K-12 to EdTech, then it becomes fiercely competitive, and then there is no limit. Then every country is equal and every opportunity is equal, as far as when it moved to EdTech as a service provider. So that's my initial thoughts.
Absolutely. I think you touched on a very important point. So because that's with the currency coming into factor, it becomes, as you mentioned about the entrepreneur mindset. He thinks that, okay, if we are putting 100x efforts, our net results are just 10x coming out of it. So why are we even trying to, I would say, explore this market, or let's say India as a market? And that makes India as a volume game as well. And that's where the mindset goes. But we have seen in the past, and we can discuss later during this webinar, that once it goes towards the volume side, quality starts depreciating and the standards go down. So yeah, it's a chicken and egg situation actually in that perspective.
No, not only from a volume perspective also, one clear distinction that I would like to make to all our audience is that in India still, the K-12 especially is still part of not-for-profit. Okay, it comes under society. So even if you're going for volumes, it still remains within the same bucket because they're not for profit. right? Only what Devdata referred to, was, you can have certain companies around who are providing, expert services. You're outsourcing
Correct.
your
Correct.
teacher training, you're outsourcing the curriculum development, you're outsourcing the event management, and that way you can have an access, to the revenue. But in an essence, the school itself is a not-for-profit organization.
So our audience is also raising hands, but we'll take the questions towards the end of session when we'll have a Q&A. So, Mr. Dev, could you analyze the ramifications because of the NEP 2020 on our international investments and education collaborations in India? Because NEP has, I would say, actually opened the doors for the entry of many foreign players across different categories in the Indian education system.
Yes. If you look at NEP 2020, for the first time, UGC introduced this twinning, dual degree, joint degree. So that opened the door completely. There were qualifiers. The partner has to be as qualified. The Indian company, Indian university has to be qualified. I'm talking only from a higher education perspective. So if you can do twinning, if you can do dual degree, if you can do double degree, all this what creates is lot of collaboration starts happening, lot of innovation start happening, lot of new courses start happening, and as we see around over I think 55 Indian universities have higher education institutions, which is HEIs, have already collaborated with various foreign universities. So the buoyancy is starting. Now, whether that translates into investments, we'll have to see. But it is possible. If a foreign higher education institute continuously works with an Indian education provider for many years, and currently that hurdle of setting up a society or a trust is no longer there for a foreign FDI, 100% FDI in higher education. So you can set it up as a company, you can set it up as a service provider, you can set it up as an infrastructure provider, all this, and you can repatriate profits. So that opens up the door. So both sides, one is NEP is enabling in terms of regulations, in terms of ability to connect, and on the other side, the new investment policy is enabling the investment part of doing a business campus in India. So both sides, there is a push from the government.
And if I have to add, I think NEP and these new arrangements, for example, as you mentioned, twinning programs, joint degree programs, and dual degree programs. I think for foreign institutions, if I'm a foreign institution, I'll see it as a testing ground, that how things proceed, that how my arrangements, if I'm putting the faculty resources, if I'm putting, let's say, academic resources into this collaboration, am I getting results? Am I getting confirmed students? Am I getting confirmed enrollments? And what is the success metrics of these students who are taking up these joint degree and dual degree programs? And because then only I can take a decision, okay, I want to invest $500 million worth of campus investments in India or not. So I think these are baby steps because that's the feedback I also get from certain foreign institutions, that they are trying to see that how the roads look like over the next 5 years. Interesting, very interesting. So yes, so Rajiv, coming to you for a second question. In terms of regulatory compliance, so what best practices should educational entrepreneurs adopt to navigate this Indian legal framework, because it can tend to become very complex?
Yes and no, I will say. Okay, anybody who enters any country, obviously feels it is tough initially to enter, but it all depends on how much preparedness you do prior to getting into the country. Now with NEP 2020, which has happened, and the overhauling of the education system with all the laws that have come in place, if somebody studies all of them prior to their plans, they'll find it pretty easy to navigate, is what I feel. For example, if you see, late 2020 and all the way through 2021, the government of India has been clear in its vision to make the country a global education hub, and therefore has taken numerous concrete measures to that effect. So it is important that you associate with someone who can guide you through this all process, and you're aware of what are the latest requirements, which is going to be beneficial to you. some of the laws which are very specific to state wise also, because India, when we say, is just India as a country, but then it has got more than 28 states and 9 union territories and all that. So each state also has their own nuances within that. So it is important for anybody who is coming from outside to not only look at India perspective, but also look at the state in which they are going to, they wish to enter, and study the laws related and the regulations compliance related to the state. For example, I'll tell you the labor laws, and the labor rates, which are there for the skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled, this wages, they also vary from state to state, because we got state to state one category and one at a central level. So central government employees is different, and state government, state to state there is difference. So it is important, for somebody who comes in, that they'll tomorrow open up a school, K-12 or a higher education platform, or collaborate. Then they need to be aware of these kind of examples of changes that will be there. If they are coming for EdTech, it is even more easier, because there are e-commerce rules 2020, okay, and intermediary guidelines and digital media ethics codes rules 2021. So that is very much elaborated, and we don't have time to discuss all the details, but these are the reference of the codes that one can go through, and these laws will help them to guide clearly in terms of what regulatory compliances need to be followed while they are entering. Now, one of the questions that may come is this rules apply to Indian platforms or foreign edtech platforms as well? That may be a point. Okay, I have some platform which is developed somewhere else, let's say Singapore or Dubai, and I'm just bringing in as it is. The rule is very clear. It says that any e-commerce entity, whether it is established in India or not established in India, has to be governed by the rules of India, whether if it offers goods or services. So that is very clear.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, and that's a very important mention that you gave about these two rules, and that is where most of the confusion lies as well, because sometimes entrepreneurs feel that if they set up their entities outside of India, they can bypass the tax implications and they can bypass the compliances and legal implications. But that's where I see as well the stance of the Indian government is very clear,
Yes.
that you have to be within a very strict purview of the Indian legal system as well as the financial system if you want to operate. And that applies for our social networks, let's say WhatsApp, Facebook as well.
Sure.
And that is what we are seeing right now, for sure. Okay, I'm sure that with your answer, Rajivji, a lot of entrepreneurs, they are listening to this and they will feel more confident about navigating the Indian legal framework.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So Mr. Devdutt, do you, so again, we are talking about tax incentives. So any suggestions or idea which you feel that these specific tax incentives could be game changers for attracting and securing long-term educational FDI in India?
Okay. Why do you think Deakin University and Wollongong from Australia are setting up in Gift City? There's a 10-year tax holiday. And if we look back and see some of the sectors which government has developed over last few years, especially electronics, mobile, etc., is because of these tax holidays. And I think education is one of these sectors where now I think though higher education and I think school education is tax free because of if you are a society or a trust, and 18% GST if you are an edtech player or a coaching center. But for FDI, I think if the government can think of a tax break, tax holiday, 5 years or 10 years, based on such calculations, I think more and more FDI will flow, because India, if you look at, is one of the largest education markets, be it primary, secondary, tertiary, edtech, anything will become the largest in no time. So therefore, that is number one. Somebody may argue that if that 18% GST is foregone, from where will government raise money? I think maybe from corporates or maybe from high net worth individual. If you are over a certain income, the education cess may go up by 0.5% or 1%. I don't think that will pinch somebody, but government will collect enough revenue to put that back into primary education and working with equality. So, one hand we have these gift city types, but other hand, if say we as Watson University want to raise FDI, first and foremost, there should be some tax and regulatory compliance mechanism that must be created, because now we cannot really attract directly. And secondly, some kind of a tax.
Abhinav, I would just
Regulatory
like
must be-
to
Yeah.
I would just like to build on what Devdutt sir said. What you said is, sir, tax holiday is there, but also from a state perspective, if you see, the state gets huge employment. The state
Correct.
gets huge business. New, operations are set up, new companies are set up, and that's the way through which the government would also be able to collect certain revenues, from that.
Correct.
So they
Correct.
look at a balance in terms of from where they can generate more income for themselves while they provide some freebies to enter into their state.
Correct.
Just a thought.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I think definitely for any industry to flourish at the start, and I've seen it during the liberalization policy in 1991 as a starter, I believe, because that was one of the early signs and major signs. Whatever economy we see that has progressed in 2024, I think that goes back to the early 90s, 1991. Yes, I think in education keeping it outside of purview of high taxation, and that makes it accessible as well, because there are a lot of foreign currency valuations involved as well. So yes, and Rajiv, coming to you. So as you know, now again, one incentivization can happen on the tax side, but another incentivization we can have from the corporates or from the private sector. So how do you see that India's private sector be incentivized to invest more heavily in education initiatives? Because we have large fund houses, corporate houses. I mean, they do a lot of CSR activities, but I think still they are in a more spread out manner and not in a focused manner. So how can we incentivize them as well?
One of the big plus points that we are having is a consistent government for the last 10 years plus, right? For any country, for anything, to get implemented successfully in any sector, it takes a very strong team at the back, right? And to pursue for a longer period of time. Otherwise, frequent changes in leadership positions, bring their own set of challenges. We have been blessed in that way, and hopefully this trend continues ahead. And now we are also seeing some sort of consolidation happening at the state level. So it started at a national level, and now we are seeing how states are also coming together. And this gives us a good platform as a country, to start working towards incentivizing various organizations in a very uniform manner, right? If you look at our current budget, the 24-25 interim budget which was announced, a lot of measures have already been initiated by Government of India. I would like to elicit few of them. Okay, for example, this budget has appreciated startups focusing on new age technologies and the metamorphic impact, behind adaptation and innovation. Correct. It has also emphasized on establishing a corpus of 1 lakh crore, which will provide a 50-year loan without interest. Now, this has been done to encourage R&D and innovation. So any private person player, like today, tomorrow you want to start something, then you can be part of this and avail a 50-year loan without interest. Now that sounds exciting, and it'll help a lot, bring a long way in terms of innovation. Similarly, government's unwavering dedication to fostering entrepreneurship is demonstrated by programs like PM Mudra Yojana and extensive support from funds of funds, Startup India, Startup Credit Guarantee schemes, right? Also, the strategic initiatives aimed at addressing teacher shortages. This is something that we have to all understand, that as we are all expanding and the school K-12 especially is growing in a very big way, we are witnessing a lot of teacher shortages, right? And NEP 2020 has done a commendable amount of work, right? And technology enabled education, particularly in tier 3 plus towns, and the emphasis on digital infrastructure, teacher training, and vernacular education is expected to significantly enhance. And this is what government is really working on, especially on vernacular education. And also in the interim budget, 43% increase in female enrollment in STEM courses has happened. Now, this is a very positive step towards nurturing diversity, right? And programs like initiatives like Kaushal Vikas Yojana 4.0 is a significant step in equipping India's youth with essential skills that can benefit industries. So overall, what I see is government is pretty much aligned in terms of driving this and making it happen. Thank you.
Sure, I think I got to learn a lot more, couple of initiatives there as well, because I was not aware of them. For example, you mentioned Startup India, definitely we know, but Kaushal Vikas Yojana and 4.0. So, and that's why I think these discussions become important when we bring experts like you and Mr. Devdutt, because these initiatives, they're out there, but they are hidden, and users, or they don't have access or real information about them. So definitely, and I think as you mentioned about that statistic of above 40%, approximately 43% growth in the STEM fields. So that is where I believe the Western world is acing from decades actually, and India has been behind in excellence. We do have STEM excellence, but that's happening outside India. Within India, so our own talent going outside India, doing excellent work in STEM, but within India, definitely we are lagging. And that's again one of the reasons that I always advocate is we must have the FDI and foreign campuses in India to have a reverse brain drain as well, for sure. Devdutt, Mr. Devdutt, so coming to you, and this is a penultimate question. So we want to discuss the impact of regulatory hurdles. You and Mr. Rajiv did discuss about compliances and frameworks, but let's say what can be the impact of regulatory hurdles on edtech innovations and the integration of technology in classrooms?
Okay. EdTech as such does not have any regulation in India primarily. So it follows the primarily follows the e-commerce regulation. I think now EdTech has reached some $6 billion market size in India, and it's going to go very high up. And it's the second largest EdTech market in the world. So I think it's high time that very specific EdTech oriented regulations come in, so that the entire discussion around EdTech currently is lack of transparency. The market is very apprehensive whether what they promise will be delivered or not, and it's run by primarily EdTech in India is test prep, tuition, college centric and school centric tuition, these kind of service providers primarily. So therefore, I think it's high time that the government and the EdTech companies sit together and form certain specific EdTech regulations. There is a forum which is called National Educational Technology Forum, which was announced along with NEP in 2020. It is primarily it can be utilized as a forum which will draft these regulations, which will discuss with all the stakeholders, maybe the students, the parents, the EdTech companies, and frames very specific regulations. Because without regulations, such a large sector operating out of India without regulations will become difficult. And with these regulations, these EdTech companies then integrate their offerings to the schools, to the colleges, to the rural hinterlands, and thereby they can innovate and bring the value of the technology there. And when you have regulations, and if somebody is in compliance with the regulations, there can be no discussion. Now it is basically, if some EdTech player goes to government, state government, and says we want to tie up with all the public run schools and give this much of this technology or that technology, then first question comes, who are you, what is your compliance, what is that, and then other compliance mechanisms from other sectors are quoted in, which may be fair, may not be fair for that particular company. So that's my primary point. Now it is too large not to be regulated specifically, and when you don't do a high-handed regulation, when you do a light level of regulation, then innovation starts happening.
I think that's one of the common resistance that we also face, and we hear as a feedback from our stakeholders and overall the entrepreneurs, I would say, candidates, that when they reach out to the government or to the institutions or for collaborations, they are judged on parameters that are not even applicable for them, and then they are unable to prove that how they are going to manage the data, because at the end you are handling under 18 students data, you are handling juvenile data, and if you are registered outside India, then how you are exporting this data outside India. So all those parameters they are asked, and and there are instances where they are not able to prove because there are no frameworks according to that. So I think that's a high time, as you mentioned, that we come with clearly defined protocols and framework for that. And again, uh, coming to Mr. Rajiv, so along with that, I believe one of the most important things that we have to see are the trends, because now with the advent of big data, artificial intelligence, the world even becoming more smaller in terms of connectivity. So there are emerging trends in education investment. So what are the emerging trends that you see in education investment that could significantly impact the Indian market?
Sure, thanks. Let me just quote a few statistics before I respond to that. They'll set the context. For example, in our India's education system, there is 1.5 million schools, around 1250 universities, over 50,000 colleges, and 13,000 standalone higher education institutions. And all of these are standing on the brink of a significant transformation, right? This network, which currently caters to over 300 million students across various educational segments, is set to expand even further as gross enrollment ratios are expected to surge in 2024. We are aware of one of the particular problems of India, which is the dropout rate. But with a lot of these efforts being taken, the dropout rate is slowly coming down under control, and therefore the enrollment ratios will keep increasing. The significant part of this, what we need to understand, is this is not happening just in urban center, but is significantly increasing at a fast pace in rural cities, right? And that's where there is a possibility to generate a substantial portion of the fresh demand for education. Given this context, look at this, the increasing per capita GDP, indicative of rising income levels, which Devdatta ji also referred to HNI. There is an enhanced capacity to pay and is expected to drive up this expenditure on education. So, and as India gears up to be a US $5 trillion economy, the education sector is estimated to be 5% of this, and it could reach almost 200 billion US dollars market in 2024, right? And this is significant numbers that we are talking about, and not just, a small piece of pie, but really something which can really, grow the organization. From a schooling perspective, what I see as the emerging trends, 4 points are there. The first is digital integration in early learning, right? And when we say K-12, we're talking about kindergarten to 12. I'm referring to that. So there is a surge in digital tools and platforms, but the most important point is it needs to be tailored for young learners. So there's a huge scope over there, in terms of digital integration. The second is regulations around early childhood education, which, as I mentioned earlier, in NEP 2020, there is emphasis on vernacular languages. There is no need for you to learn when you're, in English only. You can also learn in your vernacular language, which means there is so much more development opportunity available in delivering content through vernacular languages. And of course, it needs to be holistic, multidisciplinary, and inclusive education. The third point is blended learning models. We are already seeing a lot of AI, ML in other sectors, but a significant amount of it has now already come in education sector also. And a lot of these, 8th, 9th, 10th, what we talk about, science, maths, a lot of these are taught through AI-based models also. And the last one is emphasizing 21st century skills and mental health awareness. Mental health awareness, safety has become one important issue. And this is where all of them can focus and will be a big trend going forward. So these are the few thoughts that I had with respect to K-12 schooling.
I think mental health, which you mentioned just, that has become a burning topic, and along with that, neurosciences. And I just want to share on this platform that in our upcoming Eduverse Summit in Canada, which will take place in Vancouver from 2nd June to 4th June, we are going to discuss impact of neurosciences in shaping the future of education. Because with the millennials, with the Gen Z, with the Alpha and whatnot, the level and I would say the importance of teaching mental well-being to these kids has become very pivotal, and that has to be integrated in the curriculum very strongly, along with the other core subjects that we have, and vernacular education for sure, as we know, with the national curriculum framework that is being implemented. The importance of having 3 languages, giving power to the student that he can choose languages over sciences. So that will also open up the liberal arts side, and more innovative things can happen in K-12 education with that. Okay. Before we proceed for the last question to Mr. Anil, I'll request our audience, if you have any questions, you can use the chat box, or you can use the LinkedIn comments or the Q&A for dropping in your queries, and we'll pick that up for sure. Okay, so last question, Mr. Devdutt, is that how can investment in education act as a lever for socio-economic transformation in India's specific rural landscape?
Okay, let me first quote a very specific case. If you look at Karnataka, in 2018, Karnataka government signed up with a company known as Shiksha Foundation. And they, along with Dell, started working on providing content as well as infrastructure, as digital infrastructure to the public run schools, the government schools all across the state. And see how beautiful the arrangement is. One side there is government, one side there is a foundation, and other side there is a multinational. And today Shikshana Foundation has touched close to some 50,000 schools, 3 million kids, and this prerna has really grown. If you look at Microsoft, what they're doing, if you look at what Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is doing for education and for all other allied things, there is a scope where these kind of investments can be channelized. Even FDI can be channelized towards social development. We have to look at how NGOs to be funded. There are nowadays strict FCRA regulations on the foreign charitable donations coming in. But within that ambit, we have to look at what kind of investments, who are investing. But there are models available. There are models available in Bangladesh. There are models available in Latin America. There are models available in Africa about various kinds of PPP models where these various governments, these various companies, also certain foreign agencies have worked together to create certain beautiful innovations across their whatever scope they were doing. So the Shikshana Foundation is just an example. There are several other NGOs I know they are working in that direction, but this has got a scale, got an impact which is worth mentioning, I thought. Thank you.
The numbers speak up for themselves. For example, reaching out to 50,000 schools and 3 million kids. So that's a massive impact that they're creating. And I think the largest opportunity that right now lies is in the rural landscape. And that is where all the initiatives, we at Bharat Shiksha Sankalp, we also invite a lot of foundations, and we are trying to promote and prioritize the wonderful work that these foundations are doing in the rural landscape. We talk about tier 1 opportunities and tier 1, I would say, advancements, but most of the times we forget to highlight these kind of arrangements which you just mentioned. So great. Thank you so much. So Mr. Rajiv, last question to you, and then we take up one question from the audience. So can you highlight some successful models of PPP, public-private partnerships in India that you think have led to educational transformations?
Yes, surely. I mean, let us look at few examples which are live as we speak. States such as Punjab and Rajasthan have entered with private operators to provide education in remote areas, right? I know of one company in Bangalore who is providing the entire, coding as a course, not just as a language, but entire coding as a course from 4th grade to 12th grade. And they're running the entire course in remote locations, in remote schools. And this is a private company. And they have tied up with the Rajasthan government, they've tied up with Punjab government, and they're running these courses over there in the schools. The operators have to provide development of infrastructure to turn around poorly performing government schools. So that's something which is happening. The second example is the Mumbai PPP policy, which I'm sure everybody is aware of, which allows private operators to manage existing low enrollment schools. So here what they do is they're tying up with people to improve the enrollment of the school. So earlier it was education, now it is enrollment. So it's a mix of PPP which is coming up. And Gujarat PPP model aims to consolidate small schools in rural areas to raise the overall quality of education. I've also got one more example which says that the existing model school scheme and the planned Rajya Adarsh Vidyalaya scheme are the two prominent PPP schemes of the central government. So central government itself has launched 2 schemes, to enable PPP happen across India. One thing that we need to know is whoever is coming into this PPP mode, they need to understand that customization is the key to success in India. Anything that they want to implement or bring about a system or process may not work directly. They need to understand the local systems and processes and then only provide the service. That is what's going to be successful. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think, and that's a very important closing thought that you mentioned about customization, because most of the times the biggest mistake that we see is companies come, private partners, and they come and they go with one approach, and they think that something which has worked in Gujarat is going to work in Telangana, and the same thing will work in Punjab. And without understanding the local demographics and statistics as well, the needs. So I think that's a very important point. We have one question from our audience in the Q&A, so I read it out to both of you so you can add. So how can an Indian edtech company or an Indian education publisher partner with such foreign education institutions that want to enter the country?
Devdutt sir, you want to take a...
Okay. First and foremost, the Indian company has to be a company, not a trust.
Yeah.
So if you are a company, you can tie up with because the foreign education company can come in through an automatic route up to 100% or 50%, whatever is that you decide. You can very easily start that business. It doesn't require any specific permission as such. It's an automatic route through the normal channel. So you can start the business. Absolutely no problem about.
I mean, the most preferred route initially would be joint venture to begin with.
Yes.
It will be the most preferred route to get into instead of giving 100%. So go with whatever ratio you want to. But most important point is you can't touch the education system directly. You have to have a separate company, and that company has to be a service provider to the educational institutions. And
Correct.
that's the only way where you can provide the service.
So yes, all right. So that brings us to the closing remarks. So I think a very insightful conversations today as well. So I think as we reach the conclusion of this enlightening session, I would like to take a moment to reflect on the journey that we have embarked in these last 45 minutes. So Bharat Shiksha Sankalp, as you all know, that is not just a testament to our dedication towards educational progress, but a reflection of our collective will to empower and enlighten future generations through informed and strategic investment of thoughts. So the narratives that we discussed today, or the challenges that we have dissected today, I'm sure that they'll go a long way in helping the audience out there and people who are looking to gain more information on this topic. I'm sure that with the innovative solutions that we have contemplated here have not only provided a roadmap for investment in Indian education, but also invigorated us with hope for what the future holds. And it is evident that with the right confluence of policy, partnership, and passion, the horizons for investment in Indian education are not just expanding, but they are inviting us to soar to new heights. So as we depart, I'll just move to Mr. Devdutt for 1 to 2 minutes of your closing remarks, and then we will come to Mr. Rajiv Ji for closing remarks.
Yes, as I said, Indian education is going through the most exciting phase. EdTech has really grown into one of the key pillars of Indian education. Indian school education, K-12 education is growing and very exciting. In Hyderabad, I see so many good schools there. My son studies in one of them. So a lot of international education, even high quality domestic education in K-12 business has come in. In terms of higher education, a lot of internationalization has started happening. Even I see in Woxen, we currently have at least 8 to 10 international faculty members who are nationals of. They are not Indian people of Indian origin. They are nationals of other countries. So it is. I'm sure it is there in some other institutions in India as well, which we didn't see a few years back. So Indians are moving out. Foreigners are also coming in. Foreign best education policies, practices are coming in. So it is a very good, exciting time to be in India, to be in the education system. We are learning so much. Thank you.
Yes, sure. Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Devdutt. Mr. Rajiv.
I mean, 100% echo with what Mr. Devdutt said. Next 25, 30 years are the golden years for India. So any country and any individual who wants to ride, this is the time to ride on India, and they will be very happy that they took the right decision, after some time. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rajiv, for coming. So, all right. So, I thank you all, our distinguished panelists, for your invaluable wisdom, our participants for their active engagement, and the entire team behind the Eduverse Summit Bharat Shiksha Sankalp series. So, thank you once again for your time, your insights, and may we all continue to learn, to grow, and to invest in the boundless potential that education holds. Good day, and let's move forward together in solidarity with purpose. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.